Welcome to the Armani Talks YouTube channel. I'm your host, Armani Talks. In this channel, I'm covering communication skills in order to help you improve your way with words. In today's episode, we're diving into the world of social skills, and I'm going to help you overcome social anxiety for dummies. Don't let the title fool you though. Even though I'm talking about social anxiety from the dummies approach, this video is going to have a lot of complex ideas which have been simplified. And by understanding these complex ideas, you're going to be able to understand why social anxiety happens in the first place and a few systematic approaches that a person can take in order to overcome it. We're not just dealing with it, we're overcoming it. So what was once perceived as a weakness is now perceived as a strength. If you're ready and excited for today's video, go on and drop that like for me right on below. This channel predominantly deals with soft skills. And the first thing that we got to understand is that soft skills is different from hard skills. This doesn't require a whole bunch of willpower. Of course, these two fields are different. The question is, different how? With hard skills, we're predominantly focusing on the technical aspects of life. We're understanding how different instruments work. With soft skills, things are much more ambiguous. We're starting to understand how we work. We now start to become the instrument. And whenever we're delving into soft skills, topics which become extremely important include creativity, emotional resilience, concentration skills, social skills, the ability to communicate your ideas, all very fuzzy concepts. Here's the thing. Imagine if I give you this smartphone and I start giving you all these unnecessary details. The voltage of this battery is this many volts. It requires this sort of current. The processing system works like this. I'm pretty much speaking a different language to you because for the most part, you don't care. The main focus when I give you this smartphone is the screen. Because from the screen, you're capable of accessing the camera. You're capable of accessing your Instagram stories. You're capable of accessing the internet. It's the screen that is the utmost importance to you. And whenever I'm giving you as the instrument, what is of the utmost importance? The mind. What the screen is for the smartphone, the mind is for the person. So if we want to overcome social anxiety and deal with this fuzzy field of soft skills, we got to understand the mind. Now, I'm not going to go super specific into the different components of the mind. If you want a detailed breakdown, you could check out the level of mentality, which I'm going to link in the description box right on below. But for the time being, I'm going to be focusing on 4 main components of the mind. Part 1, memory. This is basically all the moments from our past that we currently have stored in our mind. And this doesn't require rocket science. I'm sure a lot of the thoughts that you think are from the past. Number 2 is the sensory processing system. Wait, before you turn this video off, it's not that difficult to understand. Whenever we're looking at the phone and we're looking at the contents in the phone, we're just looking at a bunch of pixels, but that's not what we're processing. Let's say you get a cute picture of the puppy, your new puppy on your phone. You're not just seeing a bunch of pixels. You, at that moment, are seeing an image of your puppy. This is basically the phone turning these different pixels into an image that you can process. And likewise, in this reality that we're living in, a lot of things are pixels, but our mind has this beautiful capability of turning it into structures that we can process. So that's the sensory processing system. The third one is the ego, which is going to be the staple of today's video. So I'm going to talk about that more shortly. And the fourth one is the intellect. True or false? True or false? True or false? These are the 4 components of the mind. Okay? And this is what we need to tackle if we want to overcome social anxiety and be a superstar along the process. It's the ego, all right? Now with the ego, there's different perceptions regarding it. Certain people are saying, you gotta kill the ego. You gotta completely destroy it, and that's the only way to happiness. Another group of people are saying the exact opposite. They're saying, no, you must make the most out of the ego. This needs to be the centerpiece of your life, and this is the way to happiness. I'm opting for a middle ground path. Rather than killing it or making it the centerpiece, we're simply taming it. And in order to tame it, we want to take away the negative perception from the ego. Where some people think this phrase indicates a person who is self-centered, I view it as the narrative creating part of the mind. This is actually very profound of a concept to understand. And this is going to dictate how well you're going to overcome social anxiety. I'm building you up step by step into each of the higher planes of understanding. So let me give you an example of the 4 components of the mind. Let's say I go to IKEA and I buy a new table and I put it in my living room. In the beginning, I'm ecstatic. I love this table. Well, one day, I'm running for some strange reason around the table and I hit my toe extremely hard on it. When I hit my toe on it, I'm feeling pain. I gotta go to the hospital. And at this point, I need to get a little cast on my pretty little toe. Now when I come back, you know what happens? This object, this inanimate object, is now becoming a villain in my mind. What do you think is turning this inanimate object into the villain? The narrative processing part of the mind. I'm processing it from my sensory processing system. I'm creating a narrative with my ego. The next time I understand from my memory bank not to run. If I'm going to run around it, then this is a bad decision indicated by my intellect. All this is happening at a hyper fast rate. So it's this that we want to fix in order to overcome social anxiety, because it's the narrative part of the mind that can turn a table into a villain, and likewise, it can turn people into enemies. And people that view you as an enemy, or they're scared of you. The same person that you have social anxiety in regards to often have the same social anxiety regarding you, because every human mind, the screen of every single human, has this factor, which is the narrative part known as the ego. Now the question is, how is it that we tame this ego? There's different paths out there. I would recommend that you follow a little bit of all these paths, but I'm just going to separate it so you can figure out which one is the right for you, and then you could always incorporate the other ones later on. One path is to become a creator of some sort and make yourself aware of the lessons. When I was writing The Level Up Mentality, there are plenty of different chapters in the book. And with all the different chapters in the book, I came to realize that it's very difficult to just focus on one component the entire time. The more that I wrote the book, the more that I saw a connection from chapter 1 to chapter 7 to chapter 15, and so on and so on. The more that I created that book, the more that I was able to see interconnections, okay? When you have an untamed ego, you're simply incapable of seeing those interconnections. You're simply making yourself the star of the show. So by creating something, whether it's a book, whether it's a social circle, whether it's you building a calculator, something, and you're making yourself aware of the lessons, the more that you are taming the ego. And every single time that you're taming the ego, an analogy is as though your separate phone is now capable of accessing the internet. So a tamed ego allows you to connect to the internet of life, and one path is to build something. The second path, let's say you're like, man, I don't necessarily want to build something. What's a quicker way to do this? The second path is to create different opportunities where other people win before you. It's not like that you don't win at all. If you don't even factor in your own win at all, then you are trying to destroy the ego. But you want the other person to win first. And every single time that you're doing it, every single time you're taming the ego a little. For example, let's say you're having an interaction with someone and someone is very excited to break some news to you. And this is news that you've already heard before. And the ego really wants to be like, look, man, I already heard the news. I want to break this news to you. This is the perfect opportunity to let this other person take the win. Let them share the news and act like you have no clue. Really? You don't say. By doing this, you are training the ego now to allow someone else to win before you, and then you ask strategic questions to build your likability in the process. So both parties won. So where for path one, we are creating something, for path two, we are creating opportunities where the success of the opportunity is to allow someone else to win before us. All right, Armani, man, I'm still too lazy, bro. I don't want to do all that work. What's even a more simple path? So the third path is probably the most simple, but it's the most difficult at the same time. And this is basically going through hardships and going past it anyways, where you have no other opportunity but to stay strong. A couple of years back, there was this one basketball player who was on top of the world. And as he was on top of the world, you could tell that he was getting a little cocky. He would talk more trash to people. He'd be showboating a lot more. He'd be hyping himself up and throwing a lot of his teammates under the bus. Well, later on in that year, his team ended up trading him, which was extremely shocking because the fans weren't expecting it. This basketball player wasn't expecting it. It was extremely shocking. But to make matters worse, this player got traded from the new team and the new team and the new team. And just like that, at one point, he was the superstar who had such a strong ego. But now he was a journeyman going from team to team to team, from superstar to average, just like that. So in this situation, he didn't really have to do anything. Life presented something for him. And this is why I say that even though this method is simple, it's difficult at the same time. But if you come out of this moment stronger, this is another way to tame the ego. So I talked about a lot in this video, so let me give a little recap. The components of the mind is broken down into memory, sensory processing system, the ego, and intellect. The reason that we have social anxiety is due to the ego, which is the narrative creating mind. An untamed ego predominantly focuses on itself, which brings more spotlight upon ourselves, causing us to get nervous. Our goal is to tame the ego rather than trying to destroy it or build our life around it. In order to tame the ego, we can either create something and make ourselves aware of all of the interconnections. We can create opportunities where we allow someone else to win before ourselves, or we just do nothing and let life present the lessons for us. It's best if we combine a mix of all three of these in order to create the most holistic personality that we can, and so we can make the most out of the mind, which allows us to make the most out of soft skills. I told you this was going to be a dummies edition, but this was going to have a lot of complex ideas built within this video, because once you understand the fundamentals, everything else starts to take care of itself. So if you enjoyed my breakdown of the mind today, be sure to check out The Level Up Mentality, a guide to re-engineer your mindset for confidence. If you enjoyed the video, drop that like for me too, and thank you for joining the Armani Talks YouTube channel.